My name is Emily, and at 33, I thought I had mastered the art of keeping my composure in difficult situations. But when my husband casually mentioned over dinner that he'd invited his ex-girlfriend to my father's retirement gala, the same woman who nearly destroyed an innocent man's career with lies I had personally exposed, I realized some battles require more than just staying calm. What started as a celebration honoring decades of judicial integrity became something far more revealing. The moment my father looked directly at her from that podium and said those careful, deliberate words, I knew everything was about to change. If you want to know what happens when truth finally gets its moment on stage, keep watching because this story is about discovering who your real family is when the masks come off. Comment where you are watching from and like and subscribe for more stories. The knife was halfway through the heirloom tomato when Ryan said it. Oh. By the way, I invited Natalie to your dad's gala. My hand froze. The blade hovered above the cutting board, a bead of juice trembling on the edge. I didn't look up. I couldn't. If I did, he'd see the flash of something I wasn't ready to name yet. That's thoughtful. I managed, my voice surprisingly even. Inside, my pulse hammered against my ribs like a prisoner testing the bars. Natalie. Natalie Hart. The name alone was a grenade with the pin half pulled. Ryan's ex-girlfriend from before we married, the woman who'd smiled to my face at office mixers while quietly spreading rumors that I'd slept my way into the HR compliance role. The same woman who'd nearly destroyed an innocent man's career with a harassment claim so fabricated it would have been laughable if it hadn't been so vicious. Ryan sipped his wine, swirling the glass like he was auditioning for a vineyard commercial. She's family now, Em. We're all adults. He said it with that particular brand of condescension he'd perfected over the last year, the tone that made me feel like I was overreacting to perfectly reasonable things. She works with my company's PR team. How long has she been working with you? The question stuck in my throat. My father's retirement gala was in 2 weeks. A formal affair honoring Judge Robert Anderson's 3 decades on the bench, a man who'd built his legacy on integrity and the careful weighing of evidence. It was supposed to be a celebration of everything solid and true in my life, not a reunion tour for my husband's questionable past. If you trust me, you'll get it, Ryan added, his eyes on his phone now, thumbs scrolling with practiced indifference. That phrase, if you trust me, the same words he'd used 6 months ago before that business trip to Miami that came back with a credit card statement featuring charges at restaurants I'd never heard him mention, and a boutique hotel known more for its discretion than its conference facilities. I set down the knife with surgical precision and turned to face him. How long has she been on your PR team? Few months. Maybe 6. He shrugged, still not looking up. She's good at her job, Em. This isn't personal. Everything about this was personal. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan's lazy rotations, Ryan snoring softly beside me like a man without a care in the world. I scrolled through old photos my friend Lila had sent me years ago when she was still trying to warn me about Ryan's complicated history with Natalie. There they were, laughing at a charity auction, her hand on his arm at a corporate retreat, champagne flutes raised in rooms that cost more per night than most people's rent. I closed the photos and opened my father's contact instead, my thumb hovering over the call button. But it was 2 a.m, and Judge Robert Anderson didn't deserve a panicked daughter call at this hour. He deserved better than knowing his retirement celebration was about to become a stage for whatever game Ryan and Natalie were playing. The next morning, my phone rang before I'd finished my first coffee. Lila's name flashed on the screen. Tell me it's not true, she said without preamble. Tell me Ryan didn't actually invite her to the gala. How did you? I saw Natalie's name on the preliminary RSVP list. I volunteer with the event coordinator, remember? Lila's voice was tight with protective fury. She's not just attending. She's flaunting it. Posted on her Instagram story about exciting evening events with a champagne emoji and a black-tie dress laid out on her bed. I closed my eyes. Of course she was. Want me to accidentally spill red wine on her? Lila offered. I'm very clumsy when I need to be. Despite everything, I smiled. Not yet. Yet implies a plan. It implies I'm thinking. And I was. All morning, through my client calls and email responses, my mind worked like one of my father's closing arguments, building, structuring, anticipating. That afternoon, my father called. His voice was warm, that baritone that had commanded courtrooms and calmed frightened witnesses. Just checking in on the final guest list. Your mother wanted to make sure the seating arrangements work for everyone. Everything's fine, Dad, I said, surprised at how normal I sounded. It's going to be perfect. This gala isn't just about celebrating you, it's about the people who believed in justice. Including me. The irony of those words settled like sediment in my chest. You sound tired, sweetheart. Just busy. You know how it is. After we hung up, I sat in my home office staring at the embossed invitation on my desk, honoring Justice Robert Anderson, a legacy of integrity. That night, as I pretended to read beside Ryan in bed, a memory surfaced with perfect, painful clarity. 3 years ago, the open-floor office at Meridian Consulting, where I'd worked HR compliance. Natalie had just filed a harassment complaint against Miguel Reyes, a senior analyst with an impeccable record and a wife expecting their first child. The details were textbook: unwanted advances, inappropriate comments, a pattern of predatory behavior. Except the pattern didn't exist. I'd spent 2 weeks quietly pulling security footage, email logs, and calendar records. Every interaction between them had witnesses. Every private meeting, she claimed, happened during times when Miguel was provably elsewhere. I found her real motive buried in a strategic memo she'd accidentally CC'd to the wrong distribution list. She wanted Miguel's position, and he was the only thing standing between her and a promotion. When I presented my findings to the executive team, Natalie's complaint collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm. Miguel kept his job. Natalie lost hers, though the company was quiet about it, offering her a generous resignation package to avoid a lawsuit that would have buried them both. She never forgave me for that. And apparently, she'd been biding her time. I looked over at Ryan, his face peaceful in sleep, and wondered when exactly he decided that bringing my enemy into my father's celebration was an acceptable move. When had he looked at our marriage and thought, this is fine. This is absolutely what we should do. The answer whispered back from somewhere cold and clear, when he stopped seeing you as a partner and started seeing you as an obstacle. I slipped out of bed and went to my laptop. The event planner's portal was still open from earlier. I clicked through to the seating arrangements, studying the carefully balanced tables of judges, attorneys, law school deans, and family friends. Then I made a change. Just one. Small but deliberate. I moved Natalie's seat from the back corner, where she'd been relegated by the event coordinator, to table 3, front and center, with a perfect view of the podium where my father would speak. Right next to Ryan, of course, since he'd wanted her there so badly. And directly across from Judge Roberts' main table. If she was going to be part of this evening, she was going to have the best seat in the house. I saved the changes and closed the laptop, a strange calm settling over me. Then justice it is, I whispered to the empty room. Ryan brought me flowers on Tuesday. Peonies, my favorite, arranged in a crystal vase that must have cost more than our monthly grocery bill. He set them on the kitchen counter with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Just because, he said, kissing my forehead. You've been stressed about the gala. Thought you could use something beautiful. I thanked him, arranged them by the window, and watched him watch me, looking for something. Gratitude? Guilt? I wasn't sure what he expected to find, but I kept my expression pleasant and warm. The flowers felt like an apology for something he hadn't done yet. Over the next few days, his affection ramped up with algorithmic precision. Compliments on my dress choices. Offering to cook dinner. Asking about my day with what seemed like genuine interest. It was a performance, and I'd seen enough courtroom theater with my father to recognize rehearsed sincerity. But the nights gave him away. He'd started texting late, after he thought I was asleep. The phone screen would glow blue in the darkness, and I'd watch through barely open eyes as he angled it away from me, his thumb moving in quick, practiced swipes. Once, I'd gotten up for water, and he'd locked the screen so fast I heard the click from across the room. Just work stuff, he'd said with an easy laugh. PR crisis with a client. You know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. On Thursday, I met my brother Daniel for coffee at the place near the courthouse where he practically lived between cases. He had our father's sharp eyes and our mother's gift for reading silences. You look like you're planning something, he said, stirring sugar into his espresso. That's your evidence-gathering face. He invited her. I didn't need to specify who. Daniel's spoon stopped mid-stir. To Dad's gala? Said she's family now. That we're all adults. My brother leaned back, studying me with the same analytical gaze he used on hostile witnesses. Then he smiled, slow and dangerous. Then let her come. But let's make sure she remembers where she is. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that public events have a way of revealing people, especially when those people think they're among friends. He took a sip of his coffee. What does Dad know? Nothing yet. I don't want him dealing with this before his big night. Smart. But Daniel's voice softened. You're going to need a plan that doesn't just embarrass them. You need one that protects you. He was right, of course. Revenge was theater. Protection was strategy. That afternoon, I took control of the seating arrangements with surgical focus. The event planner, a lovely woman named Margaret who'd coordinated my parents' anniversary party, was happy to let me fine-tune the details. I just want to make sure there's professional balance, I explained, moving names around the digital floor plan. Natalie Hart is with Ryan's company's PR team, so it makes sense to have them near the VIP table, don't you think? Direct sight line to the podium. Of course, dear. Whatever you think is best. What was best was visibility. Accountability. A stage with nowhere to hide. Friday brought an unexpected discovery. Lila called during my lunch break, her voice electric with fury. I did some digging, she said. Natalie's PR firm landed Ryan's company as a major client 4 months ago. For months, right after their last quarterly review, where the board was asking questions about marketing ROI. My hand tightened around my phone. What are you saying? I'm saying she's not there for your dad's celebration. She's there for him. This whole thing, the invitation, the front row seat Ryan wants her to have, it's not about being adults or moving past old drama. It's about her showing everyone that she's back in his orbit, and you're just there. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. That evening, I drove to my father's house, the colonial where I'd grown up, where the smell of old books and furniture polish still meant safety. He was in his study, surrounded by case files and commendations, a lifetime of careful decisions preserved in leather and paper. He looked up when I knocked, and his face softened.
Eminencia.
What a nice surprise. I sat in the worn chair across from his desk, the same one where I'd done homework while he worked on briefs. Big week coming up. It is. He removed his reading glasses, studying me. You seem troubled. Just thinking about integrity. About what happens when people pretend to be something they're not. My father was quiet for a long moment, then said something I'd never forget. You don't bring poison to a dinner table unless you're ready to serve the antidote. I met his eyes. He knew. Maybe not the details, but he knew something was coming. I learned from the best, I said quietly. That night, I was going through my email when I saw it, a forwarded message in my junk folder, one of those accidental reply-all disasters. From Natalie's work email to a colleague named Jennifer. Ryan's wife still plays the perfect doll. Wait till she sees how family really treats each other. This gala is going to be delicious. He already promised me the lake house next month for the campaign photo shoot. I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to a secure folder, filed under evidence. The lake house. The one Ryan told me was being rented out to cover costs. The one he said we couldn't use this summer because of booking conflicts. My hands were shaking, but not with grief. With clarity. I spent Saturday morning in my father's old law books, the ones he'd kept from his days as a prosecutor. Buried in the index of a case compendium, I found what I needed. State versus Hart, Natalie M. A sealed case from 3 years ago involving filing a false report. My father had been the presiding judge in the preliminary hearing before it was settled. The case was sealed, yes. but the presiding judge would have access to those records. And if someone were to, say, jog his memory about the parties involved, I sent a carefully worded email to my father's assistant, a woman who'd been with him for 20 years and understood the language of discretion. Margaret, could you pull the sealed files for any cases involving guests at the gala? Just for Judge Anderson's review, in case anyone makes reference to past proceedings. We want to avoid any awkward surprises. The reply came within an hour. Already pulled and on his desk. He says, understood. On Sunday, I went to the pre-gala charity mixer, one of those champagne and canapes affairs where everyone networks and pretends to care about the cause. I wore navy blue, simple and professional, and moved through the crowd with practiced ease. That's where I saw her. Natalie stood by the dessert table in a white cocktail dress, laughing too loudly with a group of younger professionals who hung on her every word. Her hair was different, shorter, sharper, but the smile was the same. Calculated. Predatory. She saw me and made her approach, arms open like we were old friends. Emily. Oh my God. You look amazing. Still glowing. Her eyes raked over me, searching for weak points. Ryan always said you were so resilient. I accepted her air kiss without flinching. Natalie. How wonderful that you could make it to Dad's gala. It's such a special night, celebrating a lifetime of truth and accountability. Something flickered in her expression. Just for a moment. I wouldn't miss it for the world, she said sweetly. Your family has always been so important to Ryan. And you're still under oath, I see. I replied, my smile never wavering. Old habits and all that. Her face went carefully blank. I excused myself before she could respond, but I felt her eyes on my back as I walked away. That night, I sat at my desk and drafted a final message to my father's assistant. Attached was a simple document, the old court record from Natalie's case, with key sections highlighted. Nothing inflammatory, just facts. My father's response came at midnight. Understood. I went to bed and slept better than I had in weeks. The game wasn't over, but the pieces were finally in place. The night arrived draped in October elegance. The Grandview Ballroom had been transformed into something from a different era. Crystal chandeliers dripping light across polished marble, white orchids climbing silver stands, and a string quartet playing Vivaldi like they were auditioning for heaven. I stepped out of the car in an emerald gown that had hung in my closet for 2 years, waiting for the right moment. Silk that moved like water, a neckline that was elegant without trying, and a back that was bare enough to remind everyone that I had a spine. My mother met me at the entrance, resplendent in champagne lace. You look like yourself, she said, and I knew she meant it as the highest compliment. She'd always been able to read me, even when I was hiding. Where's Dad? Upstairs in the gallery, reviewing his speech. You know him. Editing until the last possible second. She squeezed my hand. Are you all right, sweetheart? You seem focused. I finished for her. Tonight's important. She studied me with those knowing eyes, then nodded. Yes, it is. Ryan was already inside, holding court near the bar with a cluster of his colleagues. He'd worn the Tom Ford tuxedo I'd given him for our anniversary, and he looked every inch the successful executive, charming, confident, completely at ease. He didn't see me enter. He was too busy laughing at something one of his VPs said, his hand gesturing expansively with a tumbler of whiskey. Then Natalie arrived. The cameras, there were always photographers at these things, flashed like a small thunderstorm. She'd chosen gold, a dress that caught every light and turned her into a walking exclamation point. Her entourage of PR interns fluttered around her like well-dressed moths, whispering about strategic positioning and networking opportunities. She found Ryan within 30 seconds. Of course she did. I watched from across the room as she touched his arm, leaned in to whisper something that made him smile. Not the public smile, but the private one, the real one I hadn't seen directed at me in months. His hand grazed hers, just for a moment, but it was enough. Lila materialized at my elbow with 2 champagne flutes. I can still spill something on her. Just say the word. Not yet, I murmured, accepting the glass. Let her enjoy it. You're terrifying when you're calm. I learned from a judge. The crowd began moving toward their assigned tables as the pre-dinner reception wound down. I caught Margaret, the event coordinator, confirming placements with her staff. Everything was exactly where I'd arranged it. Natalie and Ryan were seated at table 3, front and center. The perfect view. My parents were at the head table with the other honorees and distinguished guests. Daniel was positioned strategically at table 5 with several attorney friends who'd been around during Natalie's scandal. Miguel Reyes, the man she'd tried to destroy, was at table 7 with his wife and their now 2-year-old daughter. The geography of accountability. As dinner was served, I made small talk with the couple beside me, both retired judges who'd worked with my father. They were kind, funny, and genuinely interested in my consulting work. Normal conversation in an increasingly surreal evening. Then the toasts began. My mother spoke first, her voice steady and warm as she recounted 40 years of marriage to a man who brought case files on vacations and still got emotional during Jimmy Stewart movies. The room laughed in all the right places, dabbed eyes in others. Then my father took the stage. Judge Robert Anderson had always been tall, but standing at that podium, backlit by soft spots, he seemed immense. Not in ego, but in presence. He thanked colleagues, friends, and family with the same precision he brought to every ruling, thoughtful, specific, genuine. Then he shifted. Justice, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom, is not a feeling. It's not revenge or vindication or even fairness in the way we casually use that word. Justice is truth with consequences. It's what happens when we stop pretending that charm can substitute for character. The room went very still. I saw Natalie shift in her seat. Ryan's hand found his water glass. Throughout my career, my father continued, I've seen people try to rewrite their stories. And that's fine. Redemption is real, and second chances matter. But redemption requires truth first. It requires acknowledging what was broken before you can claim to have fixed it. Someone coughed. A fork clinked against china. So tonight, as I close this chapter, I want to thank the people who told the truth even when it cost them, who stood in the gap between expedience and integrity, who understood that some things, reputation, trust, innocence, once shattered, require more than an apology to repair. His eyes swept the room and landed, for just a moment, on table 3. To truth, he said, raising his glass. And to those who defend it. To truth, the room echoed. All except 2 people. The string quartet resumed as dinner continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Whispers moved through the tables like weather fronts, old acquaintances exchanging glances and murmured questions. Isn't that the woman who... I heard from behind me. I thought she was. Didn't Judge Anderson handle? I sipped my champagne and said nothing, redirecting conversation whenever it drifted too close to overt gossip. But the seeds were planted. During the dessert course, Natalie stood. She'd had just enough wine to believe she could salvage this, to think that charm and confidence could redirect the current. She walked to the edge of the stage, where my father was speaking with the event host, and waited for a break in conversation. Cameras turned toward her. She'd always known how to find a lens. Judge Anderson, she said, her voice pitched to Carrie, warm and deferential. I just wanted to personally thank you for your incredible dedication to fairness and justice. It's an honor to be here tonight. The room watched. My father regarded her for a long moment, and I saw him make a choice. Not the judge deciding a verdict, but the father protecting his daughter. I appreciate that, he said evenly, his voice kind but clear. Especially coming from someone I once had to investigate. The words landed like a gavel. You could hear the collective intake of breath, the rustle of fabric as 300 people simultaneously leaned forward. Natalie's smile froze, her PR training struggling to compute this deviation from script. That was a misunderstanding, Your Honor. A long time ago. False testimony rarely is, my father said, not unkindly, but with the weight of every case he'd ever tried. But I'm glad you're here. Truth has a way of finding the light, doesn't it? He smiled, gracious, professional, and turned back to his conversation, leaving Natalie standing there, her face the color of her dress. The whispers became murmurs, became conversations. Phone screens lit up under tables as guests frantically Googled names and dates. The story was writing itself in real time. Natalie retreated to her table, her entourage of interns suddenly very interested in their dessert plates. Ryan stared at his wife, me, across the room. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw him understand. I hadn't done this. He had. By bringing her here. By thinking he could control the narrative. I simply let it unfold in the right venue. During the after-dinner mingling, Ryan found me in one of the side corridors, away from the crowd. His face was flushed, whether from whiskey or fury. I couldn't tell. "What did you do?" he hissed, grabbing my elbow. I looked down at his hand, then up at his face. "I didn't invite her, Ryan. You did. You set this up. Your father's little speech." My father spoke the truth. You have a problem with that. This is humiliation. This is consequence. I pulled my arm free, my voice dropping to something quiet and dangerous. You wanted her to be family? You wanted her here, in my father's space, at his celebration? Fine. But family means being seen. Really seen. Not the version you wanted to present. His jaw clenched. "We're not done here." "No," I agreed. "We're not." I walked back into the ballroom, leaving him in the hallway with his choices. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and goodbyes. My father received his Lifetime Achievement Award to a standing ovation. My mother cried happy tears. Daniel caught my eye from across the room and raised his glass in a subtle salute. Natalie left early, her golden dress disappearing into the parking garage like a sunset in retreat. Her interns followed, their phones out already doing damage control. Ryan stayed until the end, playing the dutiful husband, but his smile was a corpse's grimace. As the ballroom emptied and the staff began clearing tables, I stood by the window overlooking the city, watching lights blink in distant buildings like signals from other lives. "You did well tonight." My father's voice, quiet beside me. "I didn't do anything." "Exactly." He smiled. "You let the truth do the work. That's the hardest part, trusting it to land without forcing it." I leaned against his shoulder the way I had when I was small. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, "we see who they really are when the stage lights go dark." Ryan didn't speak to me on the drive home. He gripped the steering wheel like he was trying to strangle it, his jaw working in the silence. I stared out the window at the city sliding past, street lights painting us in alternating shadow and gold. We pulled into our driveway and he finally spoke. "Inside. Now." I followed him in, not because he'd commanded it, but because this conversation was overdue by months, maybe years. He waited until the door closed, then rounded on me. "You humiliated me. In front of my colleagues, my clients. Do you have any idea what this looks like?" "It looks like you invited your ex-girlfriend to my father's retirement gala without considering the optics. That's what it looks like. She's a professional contact. She's a liability." I cut him off, my voice sharp as broken glass. "And you knew it. You knew what she did to Miguel. You knew my father presided over her case. You knew all of it, and you brought her anyway because you wanted what? To prove you could? To show me that you're in control? I wanted to show that we're mature adults who can move past old grudges." "No," I said quietly. "You wanted to see if you could get away with it. And when my father told the truth, not even the whole truth, just enough of it, you realized you couldn't." Ryan's face was red now, veins standing out on his neck. "You think you're so smart, so righteous. Just like your father, looking down on everyone from your moral high ground." "I'm not looking down on anyone. I'm just seeing clearly for the first time in a long time." He laughed, ugly and bitter. "You want to know what Natalie said to me last week? She said you're the kind of person who builds cages and calls them homes. And she's right. The words were meant to hurt, and they did. But not in the way he intended." "Then why did you stay?" I asked. "If I'm so suffocating, Ryan, why are you here?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "Get out," I finally said. Sleep in the guest room. I can't look at you right now. He started to argue, saw my face, and left. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the slam of the guest room door. I stood alone in our living room. My living room, I realized, because nothing about this place felt like ours anymore, and let myself cry. Not for him. For the years I'd spent trying to make this work. For the woman I'd been when I thought love was enough to bridge the gap between who someone was and who you needed them to be. Then I wiped my face, made tea, and opened my laptop. By dawn, the internet had done what the internet does best. Turned a moment into a movement. A freelance reporter named Ari Chen, who'd been covering the gala for a local culture magazine, had captured the exchange between Natalie and my father. The clip was barely 30 seconds, but it had been shared across 3 platforms under the hashtag #Galagate. The comments were a mix of curiosity, judgment, and amateur detective work. Who is this woman and what did she do? Judge Anderson doesn't make accusations lightly. Someone dig into this. Found it, Natalie Hart, false harassment claim 2022. Case sealed, but there are references in court databases. Wait, isn't she with that tech CEO, Ryan something? His wife is the judge's daughter, OMG. By Monday morning, Ryan's phone was ringing off the hook. I heard him in the guest room, his voice rising and falling in heated conversation. When he emerged for coffee, his face was haggard. The board wants to meet, he said, not looking at me. They saw the videos. Someone sent them a dossier on Natalie's history. I said nothing, but I knew exactly who'd sent that dossier. Lila had texted me at 3 a.m. Delivered. Consider it a gift. This is going to blow over, Ryan said, more to himself than to me. It's social media drama. It'll be gone by next week. But it wasn't drama. It was documentation. Because what the board discovered, what someone had carefully, methodically compiled, was that Ryan's company had hired Natalie's PR firm 4 months ago without disclosing their prior relationship. That payments to her firm had increased significantly in the weeks leading up to the gala. That she'd been given contracts that several more qualified firms had bid on. The optics weren't just bad. They were indefensible. My phone rang. Daniel. The deposition is scheduled, he said without preamble. Miguel's suing for damages related to the original false claim. We're compelling Natalie's testimony, and Ryan may be called as a witness regarding business relationships with her. How fast did this happen? Miguel's been waiting 3 years for the right moment. Your father's speech gave him the opening. Sometimes justice is just timing. That afternoon, I met Lila for lunch at a cafe far enough from our usual spots that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. How are you holding up? She asked, pushing a latte toward me. I don't know yet. I'm in that weird space between grief and relief. That's called clarity. Lila stirred her coffee, then looked up at me with fierce affection. You know this gets uglier before it gets better, right? Ryan's not going to take this lying down. I know. And Natalie, she's a cornered animal now. She'll lash out. As if summoned by prophecy, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're not built for this game. You're soft. Stand down, or I unspool every rumor I've ever heard about your family. I showed it to Lila. She whistled low. Wow. She really thinks threats work on a judge's daughter. I typed back. I don't play rumor. Only records. Then I forwarded the entire exchange to Daniel. His response came immediately. Thank you. This is exhibit quality stupidity. That evening, Ryan came home late, smelling of scotch and desperation. He found me in the home office, working on client proposals like it was a normal Monday. We need to fix this, he said, leaning against the doorframe. I know I screwed up, but we can manage this. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just help me. I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to find the man I'd married. The one who'd proposed on a beach in Oregon, who'd cried at our wedding, who'd once stayed up all night with me when my college roommate died. He was in there somewhere. But he was buried under so many layers of ego and entitlement that I wasn't sure he could find his way back out. Ryan, I said slowly, you didn't just screw up. You made choices. Lots of them. Over months. And each choice took you further from me and closer to whatever this is. So that's it? You're just done. I'm just clear. I closed my laptop. You brought someone who tried to destroy an innocent man into my father's celebration. You funded her firm while hiding your history. You called her family to my face and thought I'd just accept it. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. And what about your decisions? His voice turned sharp. Humiliating me publicly? Sicking your father on her? You think you're innocent in this? I think the truth came out at an event celebrating truth. If that feels like an attack, maybe examine what you're defending. He stared at me, and I watched something die in his eyes. Not love. That had been dying for a while. But hope, maybe. The belief that he could talk his way out of this.
We're done, he said.
Yes, I agreed. We are. He left the room. I heard him on the phone minutes later, presumably with Natalie or his lawyer, probably both. I sat in the gathering darkness and felt the weight of the ending settle over me. Not crushing, just present. My phone buzzed again. My father. You don't win by shouting, M. You win by letting the truth echo on its own. Then Daniel, set for Thursday. Natalie's deposition. You should come. I replied, I'll be there. The next morning, Natalie posted a video. I watched it while drinking coffee in the kitchen that suddenly felt too big, too empty, too much like a museum of a life I didn't recognize anymore. She'd chosen her setting carefully, soft lighting, a tasteful bookshelf in the background, a beige sweater that said, trustworthy professional. Her makeup was perfect, her voice measured and warm. I want to address what happened at the gala this weekend, she began, her eyes glistening with what might have been tears or might have been excellent eye drops. 3 years ago, I made a mistake. I was young, ambitious, and I handled a workplace situation poorly. I've spent every day since then trying to learn, grow, and make amends. She paused for effect, dabbing at her eye. What happened at Judge Anderson's celebration was painful, but I understand it. Sometimes our past follows us, even when we've done the work to change. I'm committed to continuing that journey, and I hope that one day, forgiveness will be possible. The comment section was already a battlefield. She seems genuine. People deserve second chances. Handled poorly? She tried to ruin a man's life. Why was she even invited if this was such an issue? Her date was Ryan Miller, CEO of Tech Venture. Interesting coincidence, his company hired her firm right after. Then someone with the username @TruthSeeker posted a split screen, Natalie's tearful apology next to the footage of my father saying, false testimony rarely is. The juxtaposition was devastating. Within an hour, it had 10,000 shares. The internet, it turned out, was very good at pattern recognition. Ryan's emergency board meeting happened on Tuesday. I knew because his lawyer called our house phone, something that only happened when cell phones were turned off for legal reasons. Mrs. Miller, this is James Corrigan from Whitfield and Associates. I'm representing your husband in a matter before his board of directors. He's asked me to inform you that he'll be staying at a hotel for the next few days while we sort through some compliance issues. What kind of compliance issues? I asked, though I already knew. A pause. Then, conflict of interest disclosures. Vendor relationships. It's standard review. Nothing about this was standard. That afternoon, I received an email from RHN, the reporter who'd filmed the gala exchange. The subject line read, Request for comment. Dear Ms. Anderson Miller, I'm writing a follow-up piece on the events at your father's retirement gala. I've obtained information suggesting a financial relationship between your husband's company and Ms. Hart's PR firm that may not have been properly disclosed to shareholders. I've also found court records referencing the 2022 incident Judge Anderson mentioned. I'm committed to fair and accurate reporting. If you'd like to provide context or comment, I'm available to speak. If not, I understand and will proceed with the information I have. Best regards, RHN. I stared at the email for a long time. This was the moment where I could lean in or step back, where I could add fuel to the fire or let it burn on its own oxygen. I thought about what my father had said. Justice isn't revenge. But I also thought about Miguel Reyes, who'd almost lost everything because someone decided her ambition mattered more than his truth. About the years I'd spent trying to be the cool wife who didn't make waves, who trusted when trust wasn't earned. I attached 3 documents to a reply. The forwarded email where Natalie bragged about the lake house and called me a perfect doll. Public records showing the timeline of Ryan's company hiring her firm. A simple statement: I believe in transparency. Verify everything before you publish. I won't be your anonymous source. I'll be your cautious one. I hit send before I could second-guess it. Wednesday brought the first real casualty. Ryan's company issued a statement. Ryan Miller has voluntarily taken administrative leave while the board reviews certain vendor relationships. We are committed to the highest standards of corporate governance. In corporate speak, that was a public flogging. Natalie's firm started losing clients. Not all at once. That would come later. But in the quiet way that PR disasters unfold. Brands simply didn't renew contracts. Meetings got canceled. Emails went unanswered. Daniel called that evening. Tomorrow's deposition is going to be intense. Are you sure you want to be there? I need to see this through. Okay. But his voice softened. Remember that closure isn't always satisfying. Sometimes it's just complete. I know, but I wasn't sure I did. That night, Ryan came by the house to collect some things. We moved around each other like hostile satellites, maintaining careful distance. The board's making me the villain, he said, stuffing dress shirts into a garment bag. Like I'm the only one who ever mixed business with personal relationships. You're not the villain for mixing them, I said quietly from the doorway. You're the villain for lying about it.
To them. To me.
To yourself.
Inevalit.
You invited your ex-girlfriend to my father's gala and called her family while secretly funding her career rehabilitation. What would you call that? He zipped the bag with vicious force. I'd call it complicated. But you wouldn't understand complicated. You see everything in black and white, just like your father. Right and wrong. Truth and lies. No nuance. Nuance is for literature, Ryan. In life, you either tell the truth or you don't. You honor your commitments or you don't. You respect your partner or you don't. I stepped aside as he moved toward the door. You chose don't. That's not nuance. That's just choice. He paused at the threshold, and for a moment, I thought he might actually say something real. Something true. Instead, he said, You're going to regret this. Both of you. She's not done fighting. Neither am I.
He left.
I locked the door behind him and stood in the entryway of our house, my house now, at least emotionally, and felt something shift. Not relief. Not yet.
But space.
Room to breathe. I called my father. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. Hi, Dad. Hello, sweetheart. How are you holding up? I'm standing. That's something. Standing is everything, he said. That's where all forward motion begins. We talked for an hour about nothing important, his garden, my mother's book club, the weather. Normal things. Solid things. The kind of conversation that reminded me what family actually meant. Before we hung up, he said, Tomorrow, at the deposition, remember, you're not there to win. You're there to witness. Let the lawyers do the fighting. You just be present. Okay.
And M?
I'm proud of you. Not for what you did, but for what you didn't do. You could have destroyed them both publicly. Instead, you let the truth do its own work. That takes more strength than people realize. After we hung up, I poured a glass of wine and stood at the window overlooking our backyard. The fall leaves were turning, gold and crimson against the darkening sky. Somewhere across town, Natalie was probably rehearsing answers, Ryan was probably strategizing with lawyers, and the internet was probably still debating who was right and who was wrong. But here, in this moment, I was just a woman watching leaves fall and seasons change, understanding that some endings are necessary for any real beginning. My phone buzzed one last time. Lila, tomorrow we show up and stand up. Wear the navy suit. The one that means business. I smiled. The navy suit it is. I finished my wine, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Not to sleep. Not yet, but to rest. To gather whatever strength tomorrow would require. Because the deposition wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice, really. It was about record. About making sure that when the dust settled and the noise faded, the truth would still be standing, permanent and clear, like words carved in stone. And I would be standing too. Different. Changed. But standing. That I realized was enough. Thursday morning arrived cold and sharp, the kind of autumn day that felt like a warning. I woke early, before the alarm, and lay there watching dawn creep across the ceiling. Ryan's side of the bed remained untouched, the pillows still arranged with hotel-crisp precision. The house was too quiet without his presence, but it wasn't the painful quiet of loss. It was the settling quiet of truth finally having room to breathe. I made coffee and opened my laptop to find the morning's damage already spreading across my screen. Ari Chen's article had published at 6 a.m. Apologies and alibis. Who profits from redemption? The headline was restrained, but the content was surgical. She'd verified everything. The timeline of Ryan's company hiring Natalie's firm. The sealed court case from 3 years ago. The sudden increase in payments leading up to the gala. Most damning was a side-by-side comparison of Natalie's public redemption narrative against the documented pattern of her actual behavior. The comment that gutted me most was from a commenter named @Corporate Survivor. This is what happens when powerful people decide accountability is optional. They rewrite history until someone with receipts says, actually, no. Receipts. That's all I'd provided. The truth in triplicate. My phone buzzed. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring through to voicemail, then listened to his message while staring into my coffee.
Eminência.
His voice was hoarse, exhausted. I woke up to headlines. Your friend the reporter. She made me look like I'm running some kind of scheme. The board's calling an emergency session. My lawyers are. He stopped, and I heard something break in his voice. I know you're angry. I get it. But did you have to burn everything down? We could have handled this privately. I deleted the message without responding. Privately. He wanted privacy for his public betrayals. He wanted silence while he and Natalie rewrote their stories. Consequences be damned. But privacy was for people who'd earned trust. He'd gambled that away months ago. At 9, I dressed in the navy suit Lila had suggested, the one I wore to depositions and difficult client meetings. Armor disguised as business casual. I pulled my hair back in a simple twist and kept my jewelry minimal, my grandmother's pearl earrings and my wedding ring. I still wore it. Not out of hope, but out of habit. Removing it felt premature, like declaring victory in a war that wasn't finished. Daniel picked me up at 9:30, looking every inch the prosecutor our father had trained him to be. You ready for this? Does anyone ready for watching their marriage dissected in legal proceedings? Fair point. He pulled into traffic, his jaw set. Miguel's attorney is excellent. Focused, thorough. This isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. Remember that.
Miguel.
The man Natalie had tried to destroy because he stood between her and a promotion. I'd been thinking so much about Ryan and Natalie that I'd almost forgotten the original victim in all this. Almost. We arrived at Daniel's firm, a glass tower in the financial district that caught the morning sun like a prism. The conference room was on the 23rd floor, all polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Miguel was already there with his attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Okonkwo, who had a reputation for dismantling corporate malfeasance with the precision of a watchmaker. Miguel looked older than I remembered. 3 years and a false accusation will do that, but his eyes were steady. Emily. He stood, extending his hand. I never properly thanked you for what you did. You don't owe me thanks for telling the truth. Maybe not. But I owe you for having the courage to find it when everyone else was ready to believe the easy story. Natalie arrived 15 minutes late, flanked by an attorney who looked like he billed by the breath. Her hair was pulled back severely, her makeup subdued, her suit expensive and conservative. She'd dressed to telegraph seriousness, responsibility, rehabilitation. But I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted to assess the room before settling into calculated calm. She saw me and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or anger. She hadn't expected me to show up. Ms. Anderson Miller, her attorney said smoothly. I wasn't aware you'd be attending today's proceedings. I have a personal interest in matters of truth and accountability, I replied evenly. Especially when they involve people who've targeted my family. Natalie's lawyer opened his mouth to object, but Patricia cut him off. Ms. Anderson Miller is here as an observer with the consent of my client. Shall we begin? The court reporter settled in, fingers poised over her machine. Daniel sat beside me, a quiet presence of support. And then it started. Patricia began with simple questions: name, occupation, employment history. Natalie answered in the voice she'd used in her video. Measured, calm, slightly remorseful. Then Patricia shifted gears. Ms. Hart, you filed a harassment complaint against Miguel Reyes in June 2022. Is that correct? Yes, though, as I've publicly stated, I handled that situation poorly. Please just answer yes or no. A pause. Yes. And in that complaint, you alleged a pattern of unwanted advances over a period of 3 months. Yes. Did you provide specific dates and times for these alleged incidents? I believe so. Patricia slid a document across the table. This is your original complaint. Please review the dates you listed. Natalie scanned it, her face carefully neutral. Now, Patricia continued, pulling out another document. These are security logs and calendar records from that period. Can you explain why 5 of the 7 incidents you described occurred during times when Mr. Reyes was either in another state for work or on documented leave? The room went silent except for the reporter's keys. Natalie's attorney jumped in. This matter was settled. My client has acknowledged. Your client acknowledged handling it poorly. I'm asking her to acknowledge that she fabricated allegations against an innocent man to advance her career. Objection. Argumentative. This is a deposition, not a trial. I'm establishing pattern. Patricia turned back to Natalie. Yes or no? Were those allegations true? I watched Natalie's face cycle through calculations. Defiance, then strategy, then something like desperation. I believed them to be true at the time, she finally said. Based on what evidence? My perception of interactions. Interactions that security footage and third-party witnesses contradict. Silence. Patricia let it hang there, that silence, like a noose made of truth. Then she shifted again. Let's discuss your current professional relationship with Tech Venture Corporation. When did they become a client of your PR firm? Approximately 6 months ago. And what was the nature of that business relationship? Standard PR services. Media strategy, reputation management. Did you disclose to Tech Venture's board that you had a prior personal relationship with their CEO, Ryan Miller? Natalie's eyes flicked to me, then away. That wasn't relevant to our professional engagement. Wasn't relevant. Patricia's voice was dry. You dated Mr. Miller for 2 years. You attended his wedding to Ms. Anderson Miller. You've exchanged over 300 documented communications in the past 6 months. And you claim this wasn't relevant. Ryan and I are friends. That doesn't preclude professional collaboration. Friends who arranged for your firm to receive contracts worth over $400,000? Friends who planned promotional shoots at his private lake house while his wife was told it was unavailable. I felt Daniel tense beside me. He hadn't known about the lake house detail being public. Natalie's composure cracked. My personal relationships don't impact my professional competence. No one's questioning your competence, Ms. Hart. We're questioning your ethics. Patricia introduced the text message, the one Natalie had sent me threatening to unspool every rumor. She read it aloud, slowly, emphasizing each word. Does this seem like the communication of someone committed to ethical behavior and honest dealing? I was upset. You were cornered. There's a difference. The deposition continued for another hour, each question peeling back another layer of carefully constructed narrative. By the end, Natalie's attorney was objecting to everything, and Natalie herself had gone pale and silent. When it finally concluded, she left quickly, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown. Miguel approached me in the lobby. His wife was with him, holding their daughter, who was playing with a stuffed elephant. "Thank you," he said again. "For coming. For all of it. How are you doing? Really?" He considered the question seriously. "Better than I was 3 years ago.
Worse than I should be."
That complaint hung over me for months. Even after it was dismissed, people whispered. My wife had panic attacks. We almost lost everything. His wife squeezed his hand. But we didn't. And now maybe there's some closure. Their daughter looked up at me with curious eyes. "Are you the lady who helped my daddy?" I crouched down to her level. "Your daddy helped himself by being truthful. I just made sure people heard him." She nodded seriously, then offered me her elephant. "He helps when things are scary." I held the small toy, feeling the weight of 3 years of fear and fighting concentrated in soft plush. "Thank you. He's very brave." As they left, Daniel put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "I don't know yet. Ask me in a week." Ryan's emergency board meeting happened on Friday. I knew because his former assistant, I'd learn later, called to ask if I could retrieve some documents from the house. "He's been placed on administrative leave pending a full compliance review," she said carefully. "There are questions about conflict of interest disclosures and fiduciary responsibility." "Is he losing his job?" A pause. "That's not my information to share." But her tone told me everything. By afternoon, the story had metastasized across business news sites. TechVenture's CEO faces board investigation over undisclosed vendor relationships. Ryan Miller on leave amid transparency questions. The headlines multiplied like bacteria in warm water. Worse for Ryan, his own employees started talking. Someone leaked Slack screenshots to a tech gossip site, conversations about the Natalie contract, where junior staff complained about frozen raises while PR spending ballooned. The company's subreddit exploded. Morale, apparently, had been circling the drain for months. This was just the event that opened the floodgates. I read through the threads with a kind of horrified fascination. Ryan had always presented himself as the beloved leader, the CEO who knew everyone's names and brought bagels to Monday meetings. But these posts told a different story, of favoritism, of strategic kindness that evaporated when you weren't useful, of promises made and quietly broken. Had I been married to a stranger? Or had I just been too close to see the truth? Natalie, meanwhile, was hemorrhaging clients. 3 brands announced they were pursuing other partnerships. A tech startup canceled their entire spring campaign. By week's end, her firm had lost an estimated $1 million in contracts. She responded the only way she knew how. She went on the offensive. Her Instagram post appeared Saturday night, a long caption over a photo of her looking pensively out a window. "I've been silent while others have controlled the narrative. But silence enables injustice. Yes, I made mistakes 3 years ago. But I've been targeted by a family with connections, resources, and a vendetta. When you challenge powerful people, they don't just push back, they destroy. This is what judicial privilege looks like." I stared at my phone, reading and rereading that phrase.
Judicial privilege.
She was actually claiming my father had weaponized his position against her, that I was part of some coordinated attack. The comment section became a war zone. "She has a point about power dynamics." Are you kidding? She literally made up a harassment claim. Judge Anderson is retired. How is this judicial privilege? Classic Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Within hours, someone had spliced her post together with footage from the deposition, her inconsistent answers, her inability to explain the timeline discrepancies. The contrast between her victim narrative and the documented facts was devastating. Ari Chun, the reporter, published a follow-up thread. When redemption becomes a revenue stream and accountability becomes targeting, we've lost the plot. Some truths don't cancel, they clarify. Sunday morning, Ryan showed up at the house unannounced. I found him sitting on the front steps, head in his hands, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in a week. "Can we talk?" he asked. I sat down beside him, maintaining careful distance. "I'm listening." "The board wants my resignation. They're calling it voluntary separation, but we both know what it means. His voice was hollow. My lawyers say I'm exposed on the fiduciary duty front. Shareholders could sue. Everything I built, it's just gone. You built it on a foundation of hidden relationships and undisclosed conflicts. What did you expect? I expected you to have my back. He looked at me then, and I saw real pain in his eyes. I expected my wife to protect me, not feed me to the wolves. I gave a reporter publicly available information and my personal documentation. That's not feeding you to wolves, that's just refusing to help you hide. It's the same thing.
No, Ryan.
It's really not. I stood up, brushing off my jeans. You made choices. Bringing Natalie to the gala, hiding your business relationship with her, lying about the lake house. Those were your choices. I just decided to stop making excuses for them. So what now? You divorce me? Take everything? Make sure I'm completely destroyed. I looked down at him, this man I'd promised forever to, and felt something shift. Not hatred, but clarity. I don't want to destroy you. I just want the truth to stop being negotiable in our marriage. I pulled off my wedding ring, feeling the absence of its weight immediately. Daniel has drafted separation papers. Not divorce yet, just space. You can review them with your attorney. His face crumpled.
Please.
I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing this because I deserve someone who doesn't treat honesty like an optional strategy. I set the ring on the step between us. Get help, Ryan. Real help. Figure out who you actually are under all the performance. And maybe one day we can have an honest conversation about what happened. I went inside and locked the door, my hand trembling against the wood. Through the window, I watched him sit there for a long time, the ring glinting in the afternoon sun, before he finally picked it up and walked away. That evening, my parents hosted dinner. Not the formal affairs they usually threw, but something small and intimate, just family. Daniel was there with his partner, Marcus. My mother had made her famous beef stew, the kind that took all day and smelled like childhood. We gathered around the kitchen table, the one that had hosted 1,000 family meals, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I filed separation papers, I said quietly, breaking bread into my stew. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She didn't say anything, just held on. My father cleared his throat. How are you holding up, sweetheart? Honestly, I don't know yet. It feels like I'm standing in rubble, but at least I'm standing. That's all anyone can ask, Daniel said. Standing is the first step to rebuilding. Marcus, who worked as a therapist, added gently, grief and relief can coexist. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that felt like safety rather than absence. Then my father stood, raising his water glass. I want to propose a toast. Not to endings, but to integrity. To the people who stand when the lights go out. To my daughter, who's always known the difference between kindness and complicity. To Emily, they echoed. I felt tears prick my eyes. Not sad tears, but the kind that come from being truly seen. And to Miguel, I added, for standing in truth when it cost him everything. We drank to that. Later, as I helped my mother with dishes, she said quietly, your father and I never liked Ryan. I paused mid-rinse.
What?
We didn't like him. Oh, he was charming, successful, said all the right things. But there was something. She searched for the word.
Performed about him.
Like he was always auditioning for the role of good husband, rather than actually being one. Why didn't you say anything? Because you loved him. And sometimes people need to discover things on their own. She dried a plate slowly. But we're relieved, Em. Truly relieved that you're free of him. That night, I drove to the lake house. The one Ryan had claimed was unavailable. The one Natalie had used for her photo shoot. I had the keys. I'd always had the keys. He'd just told me not to use them. I stood on the deck in the dark, listening to water lap against the dock. This place had been our dream once. Weekends away from the city, morning coffee on the porch, summers learning to paddleboard. But dreams built on lies don't hold. They dissolve at the first real pressure. I spoke to the darkness. I release what loved control more than me. The words hung in the cold air, then dispersed like breath. I locked up and left the keys on the kitchen counter, walking away from that particular illusion. The divorce moved forward with surprising efficiency. Ryan, facing his own legal battles, didn't contest much. I kept the house, my business, and my dignity. He kept his unraveling company and whatever relationship he had with Natalie, though rumor had it that was crumbling too. 3 months after the gala, Arichan published her final piece in the series, After the Apology, What We Owe Survivors and Ourselves. It featured an interview with Miguel about starting a nonprofit focused on workplace justice and supporting people who'd been falsely accused. The final paragraph read, "In the end, the most radical PR is a life that doesn't need any. Truth doesn't require a publicity campaign. It just requires witnesses willing to stand." I sent a small donation to Miguel's nonprofit. Not for publicity or recognition, but because repair mattered more than revenge ever could. Natalie sent me a text message in early spring. Just 3 sentences. "I did love him once. I hated you because you wouldn't play the game. I'm sorry for what I put you through." I stared at it for a long time before responding. "Then let's both stop playing. Tell the truth and go rebuild.
We all deserve that."
She never responded, but I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd started therapy and left the PR business. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. Either way, it wasn't my story anymore. 6 months after the gala, my father received a community service award at a modest ceremony in the courthouse where he'd presided for 30 years. I introduced him, standing at the podium where I'd watched countless witnesses tell their truths. "Judge Robert Anderson taught me many things," I said, my voice steady. "But the most important was this: justice doesn't shout, it stands. It stands when it's easier to sit. It stands when silence would be more comfortable. It stands because someone has to, and that someone might as well be you." The audience stood with me, applause filling the old courtroom like rain after drought. Afterward, my father gave me a gift, his old brass scale, the one that had sat on his bench for 3 decades. One pan was slightly lighter from years of touch. "It was never about balance," he said, pressing it into my hands. "It was about weight. You had the heavier truth and carried it. That's all anyone can ask." I put it on the shelf in my home office, where I saw it every morning. A reminder. Life rebuilt itself slowly. Lila and I started a small consulting firm helping organizations develop ethics programs. Nothing dramatic, nothing headline-worthy. Just honest work with honest people. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious. I'd learned that I liked my own company, that solitude was different from loneliness, that I needed to know who I was outside of someone else's story before I could write a new chapter. Daniel hosted Thanksgiving that year. The whole family gathered in his brownstone. My parents, Marcus, Lila, Miguel, and his family, even Arichan, who'd become an unexpected friend. Miguel's daughter, now 4, presented me with a drawing, a stick figure with yellow hair holding a balance scale. "That's you," she explained seriously. "The Justice Lady." I hung it on my refrigerator next to the drawing of my nephew's interpretation of a dinosaur. These were the things that mattered: drawings and dinners, truth and testimony, the slow work of showing up and staying honest. On New Year's Eve, I stood on my back porch watching fireworks bloom over the city. My phone buzzed with messages. Daniel saying he was proud, Lila suggesting brunch tomorrow, my mother sending a photo of her and Dad toasting with champagne. And one more from Ryan. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I read it, considered responding, then simply archived it. Some apologies need acknowledgement. Others just need to exist in the record. I texted back to my family group chat. "Love you all. Here's to truth, family, and whatever comes next." The responses came fast, hearts and cheers and Lila's inevitable gif of someone popping champagne. Inside, my house was warm and full of the smell of the soup I'd made for tomorrow's gathering. The brass scale caught the light from the fireworks, glinting like a small beacon. I smiled, not because I destroyed anyone, but because I hadn't destroyed myself. Not because I'd won some grand battle, but because I'd simply refused to keep losing. I'd stood. I'd told the truth. I'd let justice do its slow, necessary work. And I discovered something my father had known all along. The real family isn't the one you perform for. It's the one that sees you clearly and stands beside you anyway. The fireworks continued their celebration, gold and silver against the winter sky, and I stood there watching, whole, clear-eyed, and finally, completely myself. When someone you love chooses their image over your trust, do you fight to save what's left, or do you let the truth clear the path forward? If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family, loyalty, and the courage it takes to stand in your truth.